I've interviewed Nick Clegg, who wrote the book Behind the Veil of 7/7. So the official story is that there were 4 alleged bombers. 3 travelled from Leeds on the morning of the 7th of July 2005. 3 of them in a Nissan Micra. They arrived early in the morning at Luton train station car park. Prior to that, the 4th alleged bomber arrived from Aylesbury in a Fiat Brava. They congregated in the car park at Luton train station. The official story says that the 4 of them then caught the train to King's Cross. 3 of them split off onto 3 different tube lines and detonated bombs. The 4th one, about an hour later, he hung around King's Cross for a while, and then he allegedly got on a bus and set his bomb off. That's the official line. How long after 7/7 happened did you start to suspect there was something wrong with the official story then? Was it
really on the day?
On the day?
On the day, yes, because when Peter Powers came on the television and said what he said, that was a red flag straight away.
They could see, and this came out at the inquest, a whole lot of police were arriving at King's Cross, and people were being controlled. This is before the bombs went off.
Right.
Now, this looks very much like Peter Powers' terror drill of some kind happening, and the guard was alluding to it in this conversation with Jermaine Lindsay. I can't easily go to get the senior officer because of this terror drill, because of this security control, and I think Jermaine Lindsay saw that going on. He realised something funny was going on, and it began to dawn on him, what is this terror drill he's been asked to participate in? And he decides he wants to talk to the top officer about this. Okay, finally the guard goes off and gets this fellow, comes back, and Jermaine Lindsay has gone.
Right.
So that's all they ever see of him.
Right.
As if they decide, look, we better get going now.
Right.
So sometime, even possibly just before the bombs went off, they saw these crowds milling around, and they realised something bad had happened.
What sort of feedback have you had on the film?
Almost everybody that's seen it believes that it is actually what did happen, just as I believe that that's what actually did happen.
Which Peter Power will explain to you is modern companies have to drill for a terror event because you know it's going to happen sometime. And so
they know it's going to happen sometime.
They know it's going to happen sometime. Yeah.
When governments do this kind of false flag operation, they usually run an exercise and do it, and then it goes live, so that if any of their operatives are caught, they can say, oh, I was just taking part in the drill.
Peter Power is an ex-Scotland Yard officer and runs a company called Visor Consultants. On its website it states, "This company are a team of experts located in the heart of London, but with international coverage, dedicated to helping you maximise your corporate resilience in an uncertain world. This includes running complex exercises or simple tabletop rehearsals for your business continuity and crisis management teams." These complex exercises include mock terrorist training exercises, one of which was being run by Peter Power's company on the very day of the 7/7 London bombings, at the exact time and at the exact 3 London tube stations where the actual bombs went off. Let's just repeat that. Peter Power was running a mock terrorist training exercise on the very day of the 7/7 London bombings at the exact time and at the exact 3 tube stations where the actual bombs went off. Bear in mind, there are 270 tube stations in London. Later that day, Peter Power went on national TV and radio announcing this fact.
Today we were running an exercise for a company, bearing in mind I'm now in the private sector, and we sat everybody down in the city, 1,000 people involved in the whole organisation, but the crisis team, and the most peculiar thing was we based our scenario on the simultaneous attacks on the Underground and mainline station. So we had to suddenly switch an exercise from fictional to real. And one of the first things is, get that bureau number. When you have a list of people missing, tell them. And it took a long time.
Just to get this right, you were actually working today on an exercise that envisioned virtually this scenario?
Almost precisely. I was up until 2 o'clock this morning because it's our job, my own company, Visor Consultants.
The thing that concerns me is that what are we doing for the thousands of men and women actually who are in London working? And I say that Because at 9:30 this morning, we were actually running an exercise for over a company of 1,000 people in London, based on simultaneous bombs going off precisely at the railway stations that happened this morning. So I still have the hairs on the back of my neck standing upright.
To get this quite straight, you were running an exercise to see how you would cope with this, and it happened while you were running the exercise?
Precisely.
Let's just draw an analogy here so that we can all be clear as to the seriousness of Peter Power's statements. Let's just say a bank robber robs a Barclays bank in Gateshead and escapes with the cash. At exactly the same time, another bank robber robs Barclays Bank in Newcastle and escapes with the cash. And a third bank robber, again at exactly the same time, robs Barclays Bank in Sheffield and escapes with the cash. Later that day, the police still do not have any suspects. Then I go on national radio and announce that my security company was carrying out mock bank robberies on Barclays Bank in Gateshead, Newcastle and Sheffield at exactly the same time the actual bank robberies took place. Isn't that strange? The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Now, here's the question. Should I then be arrested and questioned? It's not really a difficult one, is it? I would be banged up in the nearest nick before you could say Malcolm Rifkin's a puff. Now, the only difference between the scenario I have just described and the Peter Power scenario is the crimes committed in Peter Power's case were infinitely worse, i.e. murdering 56 innocent people and injuring hundreds of others.
He said that that morning they were doing a terror exercise for a company involving 1,000 people, and that they had planned to do a simulation of exactly what happened at the same stations. Mm-hmm. And then of course it went live, and it's just, you know, it's beyond coincidence.
Let's just illustrate how unlikely it is that purely by chance this so-called coincidence could have occurred. In this box I've placed 270 pieces of paper. Each one of them has one of the London tube stations' names written on it. Now, if I draw 3 at random, what are the chances of me picking the 3 tube stations that were used in the London bombings? Let's just pick them out. Let's pick 3 out. 1, 2, 3. Okay, the tube stations were Liverpool Street, Edgware Road and Russell Square. I've picked out North Acton, we've got Neasden, and we've got Turnham Green. Now, the actual chances are in fact 3,244,140 to 1 against. And that's assuming you've already chosen the correct day and time. If you take into account the fact that terror drills were taking place approximately once a year, you can multiply that figure by a further 365, which gives a figure of 1.18 billion to 1. Now, if I'm a conspiracy theorist for believing that the authorities had a hand in the 7/7 bombings, then everyone else who thinks otherwise are harebrained coincidence theorists. Peter Power is still on the loose. His mock terrorist training exercise is just one of many smoking guns which point to the fact that 7/7 was an inside job carried out by the authorities.
He turns up before 6 o'clock with his van, and he then, what does he do? He's an hour earlier before all the others turn up. He nods off, he goes to sleep. Mm-hmm. And a lady, the parking lady comes around and slaps a ticket on his van and sees him asleep in the van. And all trains were really slow that morning. They were delayed about 25 minutes.
Yeah, the train that they were supposed to be on was cancelled.
And the 740 itself was cancelled. That was the train they had agreed that they were supposed to travel on. And it took the authorities a whole year before they finally came around to admit that.
After they've changed their story to 7/24/25, they've then brought out CCTV evidence to try and back that up, which doesn't really show their faces.
No, it doesn't really show faces.
Right.
No.
They've brought that out, but if they had that in the first place, how come they've got it wrong that they were on the 740?
Exactly.
So
they could never have thought that in the first place. If there were any such thing as critical journalism in this country, it would point that out.
They've probably got on an actual later train. Now there's one here at 7:48.
Yeah.
Which gets in at 8:42.
Yeah.
And if they got in King's Cross at 8:42, it would be totally impossible for them to have got on the tubes for them to detonate their
Totally, yeah.
bomb.
One bit of really genuine CCTV we see on this whole day is at the filling station on the M1, just outside Leeds at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's totally natural, genuine CCTV. You see Tanweer looking quite bright and cheerful, and he goes and buys some petrol and crisps and sweets and stuff in the shop, and the station forecourt manager testifies at the inquest on oath. He says there were 2 people in that car. 2.
I see.
Okay.
Right, okay.
So
this is at the inquest as
At
well.
the inquest, yeah. He sees Hasib Bazan's in the front seat. He doesn't get out. Tanweer does get out. So I think his testimony. Some people tried to argue, oh, Khan was in the back seat. I think that testimony is more valuable.
Right.
You know.
So you think that? So that's an eyewitness account backing up what you're saying, that there was only 2 of them that travelled from Leeds.
Yeah. Right.
And the reason why he didn't is because there was problems with his pregnant wife.
Yeah, well, they didn't put out any video at first. All they put out was a photograph of the 4 alleged bombers outside Luton train station.
Which is the photograph which was
At
faked.
Luton Station.
Yeah, at Luton Station. That's got the timestamp on it.
Which is dodgy.
They've added them in. You can, if you've got Photoshop, you can see where they've added them in.
Yeah, you can see the rail going through his chest.
Yeah.
Always different.
You see, that alone, the fact that the authorities have used fabricated evidence.
It's not just photoshopped and fiddled with, but it's so badly photoshopped and fiddled with, as if everything that could have been done wrong with it has been done wrong. And this isn't just interference effects. I mean, I've quoted in my book experts on photoshopping.
They put out this photograph, and there are so many anomalies in this one single time-stamped and date-stamped photograph that it's obvious that it's a forgery, that it's been done on Photoshop or on somebody's computer. And once you establish that, that the authorities have fabricated evidence, you then have to question absolutely everything that they tell you.
The BBC has put out lies, lies and more lies about the 7/7 bombings. For those of you still clinging to the notion that Islamic terrorists perpetrated this act, here's a little factoid for you to chew on while watering your pot plants. At the current so-called 7/7 inquest, the authorities have not provided any clearly recognisable CCTV footage of any of the alleged terrorists at King's Cross or any other tube station, platform, walkway or on the tube trains themselves on the day of 7/7 before the explosions occurred. Let's just repeat that so it sinks in. The authorities have not provided any clearly recognisable CCTV footage of any of the alleged terrorists at King's Cross or at any other tube station, platform, walkway or on the tubes themselves on the day of 7/7 before the tube explosions occurred. Now, there's quite a simple explanation for this, and we're having a little competition to ask viewers what the explanation might be. Is the reason A, all CCTV cameras on all the relevant tube trains, platforms, escalators and walkways weren't working? B, the alleged terrorists were not at King's Cross until after the explosions? Or C, life is an illusion and we are all manifestations of our own consciousness and the world doesn't actually exist? Answers on a postcard to the Richplanet Starship, Do You Think We Were Born Yesterday? Who Are You Trying to Kid? P.O. Box, Slap My Thigh with a Large Banana. The winner will receive a Starship bullshit annunciator so that you can press it whenever the BBC News comes on.
They then came out with this short piece of CCTV footage at King's Cross Station, which is it's very poor quality. You couldn't definitively identify any one of the 3.
The sequence does not show any faces and is considered by some to have been fabricated and timestamps added. Now, some of the alleged bombers went on a trip to London 1 month before 7/7 and visited the London Eye. They were caught on CCTV at that time, shown here on this recognisable CCTV image. Compare this with the only CCTV sequence of the alleged bombers on the morning of 7/7 at King's Cross before the bombs went off. If these men were actually there would be multiple instances on many different cameras, including images on the tube trains of the men's faces, similar to this image. But there are none.
At the inquest, this is a big experience for me, a massive amount of totally genuine CCTV, Hasib was saying, starts at 6 minutes to 9.
Right.
And it runs on until 22 minutes past 9. And it's him wandering around King's Cross Station, outside and inside, going to Smith's, rummaging in his rucksack, crossing over the road to McDonald's, and it's clearly genuine CCTV. And for me, that was a powerful experience, and it showed not only that he really was there, but they had no CCTV at all of him before 6 minutes to 9.
Well, there was the head of the French terrorist police terrorist group came over, and he's the one actually initially released the information that it was not only military grade, it was high grade, high grade military explosive.
This is military grade explosive, maybe something called C4, which is made in NATO laboratories, and we have found timer devices for the detonation of
So this was
these.
at the scene of the crime?
At the scene of the crime. This is the nearest you get to real, genuine experts saying what was actually found. And once the story of suicide bombers and the trail up to Leeds appeared, the story morphed. Okay, it had to be brewed up in a bath in Leeds, and you had the TATP. Now this is an explosive that gives no heat or fire or light. It's pure blast. Okay, this breathtaking new revelation at the Kingston trial, it became black pepper and hydrogen peroxide. If they bought it at a hydroponic shop with 30% peroxide, that is what's being alleged at the inquest.
You have to concentrate it somehow.
Yeah, and you can't put it in a saucepan and
evaporate off the...
Yeah, that's what the inquest says. The inquest says, oh, loads of saucepans are found at the... I mean, do us a favour to me that you need a fractionating column at low pressure, special low pressure fractionation to concentrate up peroxide. By the way, the top forensic experts that the inquest got in, chemical forensic experts, would not confirm the government story about black pepper and peroxide. Right. They had to be very carefully asked questions, so they were not asked to confirm that story.